Welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. Last week, U.S. President Donald Trump made what most leaders around the world deemed a mistake by announcing the United States will be pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal. A deal that took years and hours of negotiation to put together by the various parties and was finally agreed upon by the former U.S. administration. While the deal attacked Iran developing nuclear weapons in exchange for the UN, US and the EU lifting sanctions, President Donald Trump said it did not stop the country from enriching uranium. His decision was backed by Israel, which had about a week before then presented hundreds of files and documents said to be evidence Iran was still continuing the development of nuclear capabilities, thereby violating the provisions of the deal. Our leaders from France and Germany had made specific visits to the U.S. president to try to convince him that this was the best deal yet. President Trump still stuck to his decision. And now leaders, analysts and economies are looking to see how this affects them in the long run, because Iran says it will discuss with the other parties to the deal, that's Germany, France, the UK, Russia and China, on the possibility of the deal continuing and what the return of sanctions by the U.S. would mean.
Well, there was tremendous enthusiasm.
A day after he made the announcement the U.S. would be withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal and imposing new sanctions, President Donald Trump told his cabinet that Iran would either negotiate or something will happen.
So we're going to make either a really good deal for the world or we're not going to make a deal at all. And Iran will come back and say, we don't want to negotiate. And of course, they're going to say that. And if I were their position, I'd say that too for the first couple of months. We're not going to negotiate, but they'll negotiate. Or something will happen. And hopefully that won't be the case.
The 2015 agreement worked out by the United States, 5 other world powers and Iran lifted sanctions on Tehran in exchange for its agreement to limit its nuclear program. The pact was designed to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear bomb. European partners to the deal have assured that they will continue to work with Iran to sustain it. British Prime Minister Theresa May reiterated this to lawmakers on Wednesday, saying the UK is committed to the Iran nuclear deal, but there are other issues that need to be addressed.
We accept that there are other issues in relation to the behaviour of Iran that need to be dealt with. Ballistic missiles, the question of what would happen at the sunset clause at the end of the nuclear deal, and the destabilising activity of Iran in the region. Those are issues that need to be addressed, and we are working with our European and other allies to do just that.
Julian Stead.
Thank you.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel described the US decision as a hard blow, but that Europe remains united regarding its position. Although she acknowledged it as a serious incident, she said it was still no reason to question the transatlantic partnership. She also said that possibilities to save the deal without the United States needed to be discussed with Iran. Meanwhile, efforts have already begun to save the deal. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met in Moscow on Wednesday to discuss the Middle East, and with Iran being mentioned specifically. During the meeting, President Putin said the two countries were united due to their shared attitudes against Nazism and fascism. Netanyahu has hailed the U.S. decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal, saying it had been a recipe for disaster. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi held talks with Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif on the 2015 nuclear deal in Beijing. Heading a high-ranking political economic delegation, Mr. Zarif made his first stop there to salvage the nuclear deal after Washington's withdrawal. China promised to safeguard Iran's rightful national interest as well as actively contribute to regional peace. Analysts are already speculating the impact the U.S. decision would have on the Iranian economy and on world oil prices. Those in the United Arab Emirates say it could depress growth of the Iranian economy, cut the oil producers' crude export, and end up inflating global oil prices. Iran's total oil production now stands at almost 4 million barrels per day, but analysts expect the new sanctions to have less graver impact on Iranian crude export than previous measures, since it is only a unilateral action by the US and that most of the other oil importers are expected to resist. Meanwhile, France has promised to push back against the threat of US sanctions against French companies doing business with Iran. The French government is seeking waivers and longer transition periods from the United States for French companies, while pressing for European Union measures to improve the bloc's economic sovereignty in the longer term.
En matière de souveraineté économique.
Earlier, I spoke to former Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi, on how the present state of the Iran nuclear deal could affect Africa and the rest of the world.